In the dark, emptiness between galaxies, far beyond any known star charts, a Zarketh Dominion patrol ship drifted quietly, scanning the void for threats that never came until now. The patrol vessel, Vrel K, caught a strange signal, an ancient pulse echoing on forgotten frequencies, one that hadn't been used in over 200 standard cycles. Lieutenant Corrin adjusted the sensors, expecting cosmic noise, but what appeared shocked him. A lone, battered probe made from a metal their systems couldn't identify, drifting toward them like it had traveled 1,000,000 lifetimes just to get there. It carried no weapons, no heat signature, just a single message encoded in the oldest galactic language. "Brace yourself. A human warship is incoming." Corrin stared, confusion rising in his chest. Humans were a myth, a primitive species from a forgotten sector that vanished from galactic records centuries ago. The last Dominion records described Earth as isolated, with barely the technology to leave their solar system, let alone roam the stars. But this probe was real, and it came from them. The news reached the Dominion High Council within hours, carried faster than light through the interstellar network. Commander Varkath, cold and calculating, laughed off the message during a meeting, calling it a hoax or perhaps a relic launched long ago, finally drifting into their space. But deep in his core, something itched a warning he couldn't explain. Still, to silence the growing chatter, he ordered a few long-range sensors to track the probe's origin and authorized patrols on the edge of their territory. That night, Varkath sat alone in his chambers, watching the message repeat on a loop, the image of the Earth slowly fading in and out behind the words. The next day, things changed. 3 outer listening posts went silent in perfect sequence, each reporting an unidentified object before vanishing completely. No wreckage, no debris, just silence. Analysts grew nervous. Dominion scientists tried to calculate the trajectory of the object, but stopped when they realized it was traveling at speeds that shouldn't be possible, warping space around it, bending time itself as it moved like an arrow through fabric. The object didn't reply to hails, didn't send data, didn't even slow. Dominion ships sent to investigate lost all power the moment they neared its projected path, drifting helplessly as if caught in a tide too strong for them. Within days, fleets were recalled from the borders. Military councils met in secret, and Varkath, now pale and grim, ordered the defense of their homeworld prepared without delay. Still, the object came, no faster, no slower, always moving at the same steady pace. Some called it a ghost. Others whispered about ancient Earth myths, saying humanity had once built machines with minds, guardians for a war that never came. The Dominion broadcast warnings to neighboring empires, but they too had begun to suffer strange disappearances, communications breaking down, outposts blinking out one after another. No war declarations, no invasions, just absence. Finally, long-range telescopes caught a glimpse, the first and only image of the object, a massive black vessel, shaped like a blade aimed at the stars, with no visible engines, no lights, no markings, except for a single glowing symbol no one could translate. The stars behind it bent, space shimmered, and sensors shorted out. And still, it moved toward them. Varkath could feel fear among his people. The last message they received from their outermost station simply read, "We see it now. It sees us too." Then, silence. The Zarketh Dominion, once proud and fearless, now trembled behind its strongest fleets, watching as the unknown warship drifted ever closer, ignoring warnings, hails, and threats. It came like a shadow sliding across the stars, unstoppable and silent. Commander Varketh, who had once laughed at the human message, now sat in the high war chamber, his eyes fixed on the giant screens showing nothing but a dark void because the object moved in such a way that even light seemed to avoid it. 3 entire battle fleets, sent to intercept it at different points along its projected path, had all vanished within an hour of contact. The last transmission from it. Fleet Vora 9 had shown the warship briefly, massive, black as space, its surface smooth and pulsing with strange energy. They had fired every weapon they had, beams, missiles, gravity torpedoes, but the ship remained untouched. Then the screens turned white and never came back. One technician had tried to scan the wreckage, but the system shut down, overloaded by something beyond understanding. Varketh ordered a full lockdown on all incoming and outgoing communication, afraid of spreading panic across the home systems. But fear already grew like wildfire. Civilians whispered about Earth's revenge, about how humans had disappeared, not because they were weak, but because they had gone somewhere else, somewhere far and deep, waiting, watching, and building. Now, they had returned with something powerful enough to walk through empires like dust. More troubling, the warship didn't respond or react unless attacked, which confused the Dominion Council. If it was a weapon, why not strike first? Why move so slowly? Was it a test or something worse? Counselors argued all night, demanding more fleets be thrown at it. But Varketh, now cautious, refused to waste more lives. Instead, he sent a small scout unit with unarmed drones to observe it closely. The drones approached carefully, cameras rolling, but once within 10,000 kilometers, they lost connection. No explosion, no interference, just silence again. One last drone, fitted with old analog systems, managed to send a single image before being cut off, the warship turning slightly as if noticing them. Its hull shifted and opened for a brief moment, revealing a blinding light, then closed again. No weapons fired, but every drone shut down in an instant. The scout pilot described the event with trembling words. It looked at us. It doesn't need to fire. It only needs to be near. That message alone terrified the scientific division, who had begun to believe the warship's presence alone disrupted space and energy systems around it. Some even said it might be alive. As the days passed, more systems began to fail near its path. Stars flickered. Gravitational fields wobbled. Entire moons shifted orbit. Planets in its path were quickly evacuated, though the warship ignored them. The only pattern it followed was its course toward the Dominion's capital planet, Exceltraxis Prime. Then, one event shattered what little confidence remained. The Dominion's defense network, the oldest and strongest artificial intelligence grid in their history, activated without command, running emergency protocols meant only for extinction-level threats. It sent a warning across every government channel, saying in simple words, "Unknown threat cannot be defeated. Seek refuge. Minimize exposure." Varketh, now exhausted and shaken, stared at those words for hours, unable to look away. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel in control. He felt like a child in the presence of something ancient, cold, and absolute. News leaked despite the blackout. Entire sectors began to shut down, isolating themselves, refusing to send ships or supplies to help. Allies of the Dominion either retreated or denied their existence, hoping to be spared by staying hidden. The galaxy, once ruled by pride and power, now felt empty, waiting for something it could not stop. Varketh called a secret council meeting, attended by only his most trusted admirals. He told them the truth. No one had survived contact with the warship, and even if they had, no one could stop it. His voice was low, almost broken, as he spoke of Earth, the old tales of humanity's last wars, their sudden disappearance, and the myth that they had left something behind, not for conquest, but as a final answer to future threats. Some in the council wanted to surrender. Others wanted to build a doomsday weapon, but no one could agree. Then, without warning, the warship changed its course slightly, now heading directly toward the Dominion's capital defenses. All simulations showed the same result: it would arrive in 6 days. 6 days until they met the warship face to face. 6 days to prepare. 6 days to decide whether to fight, run, or hope. And still, through all the planning and panic, one truth echoed louder than all the others. Every time someone tried to contact the warship, no signal returned. Every time someone looked at it, something failed. And every time someone got close, contact was broken. The Dominion's capital, Traxis Prime, had never known such fear. Its glittering cities, towering spires, and vast spaceports buzzed with frantic energy, but beneath the surface, a quiet dread spread like a shadow. Commander Varketh stood on the bridge of the flagship Resolute, the heart of the defense fleet assembled in orbit. Around him, thousands of ships gathered, their hulls gleaming under distant suns, forming a ring of steel and firepower never seen before in Dominion history. This was the last wall between the unknown and their homeworld, the final hope against the dark shape that moved steadily toward them. Varketh's voice was calm but firm as he addressed the fleet commanders. "We do not know what we face," he said, "but we will stand together. Traxis Prime will not fall without a fight." Below, civilians hurried to shelters. Emergency broadcasts ran continuously, and scientists worked to understand the strange warship's abilities. The warship itself, the Aegis, remained quiet, drifting silently through the void, unaffected by the frantic preparations. Its black surface absorbed light, and no weapons fire could touch it. The fleet launched probes, fired test beams, and activated every shield in the city's orbit, but nothing made a dent. Varketh studied every report with growing frustration. The Aegis did not attack. It simply advanced, steady and unyielding. Suddenly, a sharp alert echoed through the command center. A fleet of scout ships reported a massive energy pulse from the Aegis. It wasn't a weapon, at least not in any known form. Instead, the pulse swept through the defense ring, disabling power grids and communication channels. Ships drifted helplessly, their weapon systems offline. The entire fleet was in chaos. Varketh ordered immediate repairs and emergency protocols, but the pulse repeated every hour, each time more intense, cutting deeper into their defenses. The capital's AI systems, designed for war, began to warn of potential collapse. Panic stirred among the people. Yet, even in the chaos, the Aegis did not fire a single shot. Its presence was enough to cripple them. Varketh realized this was not a battle of weapons, but a test of will and spirit. As the days passed, diplomats and scientists gathered in secret, hoping to find another way. They examined the old records of humanity, hoping for clues. Legends spoke of a species that had fought countless wars and then vanished, leaving behind guardians to protect peace in the stars. Was the Aegis one of those guardians? The question haunted Varketh as he watched the warship move closer, crossing the final kilometers. The fleet had been rebuilt, shields restored, and weapons ready. But the Aegis still showed no signs of attack. Then, at the moment of final approach, a broadcast suddenly filled every channel, not with threats or demands, but with a simple message, an image of Earth, lush and blue, and beneath it, a single word glowing across the screen, remember. The message was not in their language, but somehow it carried meaning beyond words. It reminded the Dominion of what humanity once was and what they could become. It spoke of memory, of history, and of a warning that no one could ignore. The Aegis had come not to destroy, but to teach. The fleet lowered its weapons, and a heavy silence fell. Varketh understood then that this warship was more than a machine, it was a message carved from the stars themselves. And as the Aegis slowly turned and disappeared into a shimmering corridor of light, the Dominion knew their last wall had not been a shield of steel, but the memory of a species that chose peace over war and power wielded with wisdom over destruction. The silence after the Aegis turned away from Exceltraxis Prime was heavier than the threat itself, a silence that did not feel like relief but something deeper, confusion, awe, and fear wrapped together. Commander Varketh stood on the main bridge, staring at the empty black where the warship had disappeared into a slipstream corridor no Dominion technology could trace. There were no celebrations, no cheers, not even a word. The defense ring still floated above the planet, untouched yet helpless. Ships powered down, weapons retracted, and all that remained was the message broadcast across every Dominion screen, device, and satellite Earth, distant and bright, and beneath it, a single word glowing in universal code, remember. The fleet officers replayed the message over and over, scanning it for hidden meaning, military code, or threat. But it was just that, an image and a word. And yet the entire Dominion felt like it had been judged and spared for reasons it didn't understand. Across the stars, people whispered that humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as watchers. And the Aegis, a relic of a war no one remembered, was now their warning. But not everyone in the Dominion believed in peace. Within days, debate roared inside the Dominion Council. Some called for humility, to open records, to learn from the humans' silence, but others demanded action. "We cannot wait for another message," barked General Ardren, head of military intelligence. The warship withdrew, but next time it may not. He called it a psychological weapon, a tool meant to scare the Dominion into surrendering power. "If we do nothing," he warned, "we lose everything we've built." Varketh, older and quieter now, argued against him, saying the ship could have destroyed them, but didn't. That was not a message of conquest, he said. It was a message of memory, of warning. But Ardren had already started building support from fearful council members. In secret, Dominion engineers began constructing a counter-weapon, using fragments of strange tech recovered from one of the Aegis's disrupted drones. They called the project Echofire, a pulse weapon designed to mimic the energy signature of the human warship, hoping it would disrupt or attract it again. Varketh opposed it with everything he had, but the council outvoted him. Meanwhile, across the outer sectors, strange events began again. Entire colonies reported flickers in time, moments where light bent unnaturally or power grids reset without cause. In deep space, explorers saw brief flashes, shapes in the dark like shadows of ships. One convoy vanished without a trace, and all that remained was a fragment of hull with a word burned into it, N. The Dominion was growing nervous again. Then the Echo-Fire weapon was completed, hidden on an unmapped moon deep in the Kirith sector. Dominion Command launched it without warning, sending out a pulse strong enough to ripple across dozens of systems. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, every deep space sensor blacked out. The stars themselves flickered in recordings, as if reality had skipped a beat. A tremor shook space. And then the Aegis returned. Not from the direction it had vanished, but from inside their space. It emerged from what looked like a fold in the galaxy itself. No energy spike, no warning. One moment, the system was quiet, and the next, the warship hovered above the moon where Echo-Fire had been fired. The moon cracked beneath it. Dominion commanders panicked, sending fleets to respond. But by the time they arrived, the moon was gone, not destroyed by weapons, but simply erased. No debris, no impact, just smooth space where matter used to be. The Aegis hovered in silence. Then it began to broadcast, not to military channels, but civilian ones. It showed systems, long-gone empires erased from star charts, ruins scattered across space. It showed them what had happened to others who forgot the lessons of war. And then, for the first time, it spoke. A voice, calm and mechanical, filled every Dominion channel. This is not retribution. This is remembrance. Humanity left behind protectors. You have called us again. Be still. The message stunned the galaxy, but General Ardren, blind with fear and pride, declared war. He ordered a full assault fleet toward the Aegis, calling it a bluff, a machine using tricks to scare the Dominion. Fire everything, he ordered. Let it bleed. The fleet moved, thousands strong, the largest force ever launched in Dominion history. As they approached, the Aegis did not move. It did not raise shields. It did not respond. The fleet surrounded it. They fired. For a moment, the stars disappeared behind the glow of energy weapons, missiles, plasma lances. The space around the Aegis twisted with force, but then all that power simply vanished. Not absorbed, gone. As if reality had bent to protect the ship. Then the Aegis acted. It did not fire traditional weapons. Instead, it released a field and invisible wave that passed through the entire fleet. One by one, ships went silent. Engines failed. Weapons shut down. Lights dimmed. But no one died. Every life support system remained. The crews floated helplessly, surrounded by dead metal. Then their screens lit up again, and the same image returned Earth, blue and bright, and below it, you do not understand war. The Aegis moved through the silent fleet, like a spirit, not harming a single being, and vanished once more. General Ardren was removed from command, his legacy ruined. Varketh returned to the council and stood in silence as members debated what to do. He didn't speak until the room was quiet. We were shown mercy, he said, not because we are strong, but because we are still capable of learning. Across the Dominion, people changed. History lessons began to include Earth, not as a threat, but as a mirror. Stories of human wars were told, not for glory, but as warning. And deep in the archives, hidden files were opened, records of humanity's last days in known space, when they left not to flee, but to watch, to build protectors that would end any future threat before it began. The was not a weapon of destruction. It was a message of fire, a living memory, reminding the galaxy what humanity had once paid in blood. And now It floated out there, silent and unseen, waiting not to punish, but to protect a peace forged, not by fear, but by understanding. From then on, no one dared create a weapon meant to rival it. And across every Dominion star system, one phrase remained carved into walls, ships, and memory. Brace yourself. A human warship is incoming, and nothing unjust will survive. Years passed, but the memory of the Aegis never faded from the minds of the Dominion or the countless other civilizations that had watched its silent judgment unfold. Even without further appearances, its presence lingered like a shadow across the stars, a constant reminder of what could come again. Without warning, without mercy, and without need for words. Across the galaxy, the Dominion-changed warships were decommissioned, military research slowed, and fear gave way to caution, then quiet respect, and eventually to questions that whispered through the dark corners of space. Where had the Aegis gone? Who had sent it, and were there others like it? Still waiting, still listening. Commander Varketh, now older, retired, and more philosopher than soldier, spent his final days writing not orders or reports, but quiet reflections archived for future generations. His titles were lost, his medals melted down, but his voice remained steady through the years, speaking always of one truth. The Aegis came not to destroy us, but to show us the cost of forgetting. Yet even peace has its limits, and curiosity, though once feared, began to rise again, especially in younger minds untouched by war. A new generation, born in the quiet left by the Aegis, questioned the old warnings and saw not terror, but wonder in the mysterious ship that had silenced fleets without death and erased a moon without sound. If it was a weapon, it was the most perfect weapon. And if it was a guardian, then who did it serve? Among these voices was a young historian named Keelan Trass, who believed the Aegis was only the surface of something larger, something ancient and far beyond human origin. He studied forgotten records, decoded data fragments from the ruined drones, and even interviewed former Dominion officers in secret, building a map not of stars, but of patterns, strange shifts in gravity fields, system outages, and signals that had no source. And through it all, he found a trail, a ripple in space that repeated every 314 days, faint and almost invisible, stretching across systems like the wake of something vast moving far beyond normal detection. He called it the Aegis Echo. No one believed him at first, but when an unmanned listening post in the Ivara Reach reported an event that matched the pattern, a sudden loss of power, a surge of background radiation, and a brief image of a massive shadow, Kellen was granted a small science vessel, the Mira, to investigate the signal path, though officially his mission was to study ancient war debris. Captain Lisa Norvin led the mission, a quiet and firm officer known for discipline and survival in deep space. And though she didn't share Keelan's fascination with the Aegis, she respected his conviction and allowed him full access to the ship's long-range scanners. They followed the Echo through dead sectors, old battlegrounds, and collapsed systems, finding along the way odd distortions, places where time ran faster or slower, where objects seemed older than they should be, and where nothing electronic worked as expected. In one sector, they found a ship frozen in a beam of white light, its crew suspended in mid-motion, untouched by time. In another, they found a station crushed inward as if gravity itself had imploded from within. Each time they approached, the signal grew stronger, more rhythmic, and more deliberate, no longer random but timed, as if responding to their presence. Then, far beyond any known route, deep in the black region called the Veiled Belt, they found it not the Aegis itself, but a chamber, a structure the size of a small moon, hidden within an asteroid cluster that did not appear on any map. It was not built by the Dominion, nor any known race. It pulsed with the same light Keelan had seen in the old footage of the Aegis, soft and endless, like a heartbeat. The Mira approached carefully, weapons offline, shields raised to minimum to avoid triggering any defense systems. As they neared, the structure opened. No force, no sound, just a slow parting of metallic petals, revealing a core that shimmered like starlight trapped in glass. They sent drones inside, but each one lost signal after crossing the threshold. Against protocol, Keelan insisted on entering himself, saying that if this was truly linked to the Aegis, it needed a witness, not a machine. Captain Norvin, against her better judgment, allowed it, sending a team of 3 with him. Inside, there was no gravity, no sound, and no resistance. They floated through massive halls of dark metal, covered in markings that shimmered only when viewed indirectly, symbols that shifted and changed depending on thought and focus. Then they reached the central chamber, where a single object waited, a sphere hovering in silence, covered in hexagonal panels that moved like breath. When Keelan touched it, the lights inside the structure dimmed, and a voice not heard but felt entered their minds. It spoke, not in words, but in memories, in emotions, in sights of burning skies and silenced planets, of ancient wars fought not by the Dominion or humans, but by something even older, now long vanished. The Aegis, the voice explained, was one of many, created by those last survivors, not to conquer, but to prevent the rise of war-driven empires. Each Aegis was bound to the memory of Earth, because Earth had been the final battlefield, where humanity, after breaking itself in 1,000 pieces, chose to leave, not to rule, but to ensure others did not repeat the same path. Humanity had become custodians of the fire, not its users. The echoes were warnings, ripples left by ships like the Aegis moving through space, watching, guiding, and when needed, intervening. But now, the voice warned, something had changed. One Aegis had gone silent, not because it failed, but because it had been stopped. Something was hunting them. The memory ended, and the chamber began to collapse slowly, not in violence, but in fading light, folding in on itself as if its purpose had been fulfilled. The crew raced back to the Mira, engines pushing maximum thrust. Behind them, the chamber vanished into nothing, leaving only open space. Keelan tried to explain what he had seen, but there were no proper words. Only the lingering echo of the voice and its final message burned into his mind. The Watchers are not alone. The silence is broken. Prepare. When they returned to Dominion space, the signal trail was gone. The ripple had stopped. And though no one could trace what had changed, deep observatories began to report new patterns, unmarked vessels passing through the edges of star systems, silent and strange, not of Aegis design, darker, colder, and without the light that had always accompanied the Watchers. These were not guardians. They were something else, something that had waited longer, and now they were moving. Across the galaxy, scientists, soldiers, and leaders began to feel the weight of what was coming, not war, not yet, but something deeper, a change, a challenge, a test of what kind of future they had chosen after the Aegis left its warning. Commander Varkath died in his sleep the night the report reached the Council, a quiet breath marking the end of an age. His final log, found unread in his private records, simply said, "We remembered. Now we must act like it." And somewhere beyond the stars, in a place no ship could reach and no signal could trace. The Aegis moved once more, slower now, watching not the ones it had once judged, but the dark approaching from the places even memory had forgotten. It did not speak. It did not fire, but its presence was felt. Across the void, the message repeated itself, now no longer a warning, but a promise. Brace yourself, a human warship is incoming, and nothing will survive that dares bring war to those who remembered the fire.